resisting success is we wanted success on our own terms, not to sell out, not to compromise yourself. Do what's in your heart, remain true to your heart.
Then in '89 we toured Europe and we broke up.
The group divided while we were overseas.
Dan wanted to break up the band.
Playing these far, far out of the way places like farmland.
Some nights we played in front of 800 people, some nights in front of 50 people.
Hades had the potential to really bust out after that third record. Had the third record come out after we came back from Europe and got it together and put it out. 10 years later, here we are doing a record.
The lineup we have together now, everybody gets along beautifully.
Somebody like Metal Blade or Nuclear Blast is going to sign us.
The new record, heavier, faster, there is just no comparison.
It's definitely cool to be able to play music and record music at this stage in our lives.
Okay, the beginning of Hades. I started playing guitar in March of '78, and I had the name Hades picked a few months earlier from my English class where I was studying Greek mythology.
Now, the name Hades, many people know that name from Greek mythology.
Right.
And
that's where we took it from. We didn't take it from the Bible. Hades to us is the place of the dead and the god of the dead, and we want to be a positive influence on people, and our lyrics convey that idea.
Paul Smith and I were the only two guys in Hades then, and we'd play any song we could figure out. Paul had been playing a few months earlier than me, so he could figure out Then She Kissed Me by Kiss or Horse with No Name, so that was in our repertoire. Of course, we probably played the songs a little bit wrong, and probably a lot wrong. But Hades got more serious. We started doing covers by Judas Priest and bands like that, the old school stuff. And we started writing originals. We put out a 45 in 1982 called Deliver Us From Evil with Girls Will Be Girls and Social Disease. Sent a couple copies to Europe, got our first reviews in Kerrang, which was cool. And then Hades put out Easy Way Out on Metal Massacre 6 on Metal Blade Records. Did a compilation with called Born to Metalize on Megaforce. And then we had a different vocalist for a few months, and people started coming and going. It was Tommy Coombs was in place at that point.
Only guy who's hung with me for 5 years because he's the best drummer in power metal today is my drummer, T. Coombs. And how old are you now? I'm 22 years old now. This guy, 5 years.
usually people in the music industry call the drummers the most naive member of the band. Thank you. But yet they seem to be so intelligent when they're jamming away. How do you feel when you're behind the kit and just rocking it away at the shows?
The energy level is incredible.
I met Dan in his basement actually back in, it had to be like 1985, and we went in there. I was in a different band at the time with this guy Joe playing drums, and Joe calls me up. He's like, hey, we're going to go jam with the guys in Hades tonight. We're going to go just hang out with them, play some Iron Maiden songs, some Hades songs. I said, all right, whatever, if you really want to do it. He was really into it. So we went and we did it, and I meet Dan, and he's all, you know, Mr. Hades, and we're at the studio trying out songs and stuff, and I'm taking it really casually, thinking, you know, it's cool to be jamming with these guys, but whatever, I like the band I'm in, and, you know, everything's fine. Turns out the entire night was an audition, and I never knew it. Joe was auditioning on drums, and I was auditioning on vocals, and looking back on it, I don't know how much you remember of that, but they must have thought I was pretty cocky, because I was just kind of treating it like it was a jam session, not like a tryout. And Dan came up to me, I'll never forget this. I was playing a video game in the front of the rehearsal studio, and he comes up and he's like, so, I mean, what are you doing? What do you do with your life? And I'm like, well, I go to college, you know. I said I play in the band, and if the band makes it, great, and if it doesn't, you know, so what? I still got my school, and I can go on to something or whatever. And he's like, that's a shitty attitude. And I'm like, who is this guy? And then the next minute, we walk into the room together, and we start jamming songs. And I remember we went to lunch, and there's a big story on a band, the heavy metal band in the Bergen Record. And I said, if you join the band, I can get us to this point where we get stories in magazines and everything. Total lie, you know. We never got imprinted in any magazines. But Alan joined in '85 along with Jimmy Schulman. Tom Coombs, like I said, was already there. Scott LePage hung on with us.
and we recorded a 45 which featured The Cross and A Widow's Might.
Got involved with Hades, I believe. I was playing in a band called Attacker and made an album with them, ironically on Metal Blade. Due to some overplaying, I was dismissed, and a few weeks later I got a phone call from Dan. I think he might have heard the album and asked me to come down and play on a 45 they were just putting out. And, you know, we took it from there. Later on, did a demo, and then we went to do our first album.
In September of '86, we went to Fox Studios in Rutherford and started working on Resisting Success, our first CD.
I played on Resisting Success, the first album. I played all the lead guitar parts, and well, not all of them. Dan played some, but I played all the guitar. I mean, it's a good album, and I love the songs, and you know, for what it is, it's great. But my personal playing, I feel like, well, I wish I can go back and do some of it over. You know.
I guess for the sake of diversity, I contributed a song per record. And back in those days, I was influenced pretty much by a lot of progressive music, you know, Rush, yes, but Iron Maiden was a big influence. So on the first record, pretty much did a little Steve Harris number there. I read a little Edgar Allan Poe story and transposed it and put it down into music, and there you have Mask of the Red Death.
Well, the statement Hades meant to make when we released Resisting Success was there were certainly, particularly 1986, 87, guaranteed ways to sell a lot of records, you know, wearing the makeup, playing those power ballads. And what we meant by resisting success is we wanted success on our own terms.
As far as Resisting Success goes, that's another title that Dan Lorenzo came up with. And I think that the one big thing I remember about that name is Warrell Dane from at the time Sanctuary, now from Nevermore, saying to Joe Allen, I think, on the road in Europe. Joe Allen was working for Anthrax at the time, saying, "Oh, Hades, Resisting Success," because Joe had his shirt on, because they did a good job of that. And we were just out promoting that first record, and it was like this crushing blow to me at the time. I remember thinking, what a jerk that guy is, you know?
Resisting success just meant not to sell out, not to compromise yourself, do what's in your heart, remain true to your heart.
But yeah, we did Resisting. We thought we were going to be huge stars. We were on the same label as Exodus. They had just come out. They had the guy that was, you know, The guy in Metallica was formerly in Exodus. Exodus is going to be huge. We're on the same label. Well, stands to reason we're going to be huge, and it didn't quite happen that way, but we really had big expectations going in, and we were pretty naive, and I'm pretty happy with the record. The sound quality could have been improved a bit, but for what we were doing at the time, I think we did all right. Jimmy our bass player drove his car right into a telephone pole, and yeah, he was laid up for quite a while.
Jimmy broke his leg, and we were, If at First You Don't Succeed came out February 2nd in 1987, and February 1st we were opening up for Slayer at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, and it was so sad because Scott LePage informed us that he wouldn't be able to go on tour, so we got Ed Furman in the band. We had this kid John fill in for Jimmy Schulman on bass, so here we are trying to promote our brand new record, Resisting Success, and already the guitar player and the bass player are not the damn guys on the record due to no fault of us.
We're really looking for a guitar player.
And if you want to send us a tape and a photo of yourself, there's going to be an address up on the screen later on. We are looking for a great lead guitarist in the style of Gary Holt from Exodus, something along that line.
Let's see, I joined Hades January 1987. I actually opened up for Hades once with my band. I had a band called Warning. We do like mostly covers and stuff. And then I got the chance to try out. They had put out a 45 that had the song Widow's Might and the Cross on it. And I went out and bought that, and I was really impressed with the work on it. So, and I bought actually some live tapes. So I had actually heard some of the songs from the first record, but just the live versions of it, and I thought it was cool. So when I got the chance to try out, I was real psyched.
So Jimmy came back and got better, and Hades went on to record our second record, If at First You Don't Succeed. Prior to that, we actually recorded 3 songs that ended up on If at First: Eye to Eye, Face to Fat Reality, Outro, and MES. There was going to be an EP called Stay Tuned, but it ended up being the first few songs on the record, If at First You Don't Succeed, which came out in 1988, I believe. Album, we have to give most of the credit where credit is due to Alan Tecchio, our vocalist, along with Ed Furman, who's done here. Yeah, Alan wrote the lyrics for the songs, and some of us would give him ideas. Sometimes Alan would think of his own ideas. We try not to write about the same thing twice, just like we don't want to have 2 songs that sound similar in musical structure. And basically, like Jimmy would probably say, like he said in the past, a lot of the lyrics are taken from Alan's personal experiences or something that we'll give him. Like once Tommy and I were driving into the city with Diplomatic Community, we saw the plates and we said, oh, we got to write a song about this. Whatever upsets us.
Now, what does Prince Charles and the band Hades have in common? When the Duke of Windsor auditioned for the prestigious London Magic Circle, he performed the oldest magic trick known to man, the cup and balls. And that's what Hades have pictured on their second album, If at First You Don't Succeed. Though the band hails from New Jersey, there's no danger of comparison to Bruce or his younger brother, Bon Jovi. The sound of Hades is hard thrash with strong lyrical content, including a nod to Shakespeare in the song Aftermath of Betrayal. No plans yet for a video. However, you can see bass player Jimmy Schulman in 2 other videos, Beastie Boys' anthem, Fight for Your Right to Party, and Fate's Warning, Anarchy Divine. Hades will invade Prince Charles' domain this May with a European tour.
And then in '89, we toured Europe and we broke up. This wasn't fun anymore. We've told this story a million times. People ask us, who was fighting. I mean, everybody was fighting. We were touring Europe, Germany, Belgium, Holland, and Switzerland.
We went to Europe for the first time, which was, it started off as an exciting time, I would imagine, of everybody's life. But as time went on, the group divided while we were overseas.
We were never best friends, but I think that's normal with a lot of bands. We had very high hopes about going to Europe because we got so much European fan mail. But when we went to the European tour, man, I tell you, everything was different once we got there. We had an opening band called Midas Touch, good guys. They were from Sweden, and we were using their road crew and their equipment. And the first 2 shows were in Holland. There was really only like 100 people there a night, and we're like, wow, this is weird. So now we're playing Lübeck, Germany on a Friday night, I remember, and a bunch of press showed up before the show. We're like, wow, this is more like it. We're doing tons of interviews. But even that show was only a couple of hundred people. The audience reaction was phenomenal, but we were playing these far, far out of the way places like farmland.
I'm really involved with kind of like the breakup part of the band. I wanted the band to continue. I thought we had a good thing going back in '89, and it was just, I mean, Dan wanted to break up the band. He was really angry and that things didn't go the way they were supposed to go. The tour wasn't that great, and I mean, I was having fun just, to be playing, and, some nights we played in front of 800 people, some nights in front of, 50 people, but still, it was enjoyable, and it was nice to meet the fans overseas, and, I was willing to look past, the problems in the band and try to work with everybody, but Dan really wouldn't have it.
I have lots of pictures of the back of Dan and Ed's head, sitting in the back of the van while we were traveling from country to country. I guess we were a band divided, so it was Dan and Ed for some reason versus the rest of us. And every time I look back on some pictures, all I see is the backs of their heads because they wouldn't pose for any pictures with us. I guess I knew when I went on stage one evening and I asked them for an E, I guess something you do to make sure we're all in tune before curtain goes up and we play. Nobody responded, so I was out there on my own, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end.
I think too many bands don't take responsibility for their failure, and we have to, the buck stops with the band. We went over there with, the illusion that we were very popular when we weren't, but at the same time, I feel the promoter could have done a better job, no matter what, though. He was the first guy to bring us there, so he deserves a tip of the hat, and we have to blame ourselves to a degree, but the promoter didn't help situations. People just couldn't find where we were playing.
I think that Hades had the potential to really bust out after that 3rd record, had the 3rd record come out after we came back from Europe and got it together and put it out. Because the songs that came out on Exist to Resist a few years ago were the majority, basically, of what we had for the 3rd record. And had we put it out with the excitement the band had at the time, and the sound that we had, and the energy, I think it might have been great, because everyone always tells me, even to this day, oh, Hades, if you only stayed together after that tour, you guys would have been the next Metallica, because all these bands were really getting snatched up at the time and loved and were going out on these great tours like Testament and Exodus. All these bands were just really doing it, and we were right there on the cusp, and we blew it in Europe on tour.
It just wasn't fun anymore. It didn't really matter who was fighting and who wasn't.
And I think that in the back of my mind, I'll always wonder if maybe we were poised to do it and we could have done it at that point, but it just wasn't in the cards. We didn't do it.
We get a little
recorded a record called Exist to Resist, which I love, but it was never intended as though Hades is back together. People, for some reason, have that thought. We just wanted to do a reunion record of the songs that we had written in 88 and 89.
What's weird about it is that we weren't a band striving to make it and become huge and whatnot when we did the record. We did it because we had some new stuff. Dan had written some cool new riffs. We went in to do the demo for a third studio record before we broke up. And Exist to Resist kind of culled those songs, and then the new stuff that Dan wrote, we put it together. And I think it's a great record, but Tommy's not playing as flashy as he used to on it with the drums, which I missed that a bit. He did mess his arm up right before we recorded it. And so I missed that a little bit, but the songs are more mature, and I think it's a really cool record. There's some real heavy stuff, and I think it's the first time that you hear what Dan and I did in Nonfiction on a Hades record. Because prior to that, there had obviously been no Nonfiction, and we didn't explore that sound. And Ed was really against tuning down the guitars, and we had Hades together the first time, and that really prevented Dan from going in the musical direction he wanted to. And then, fortunately, he was able to do that with Fiction, and I was able to be a part of that.
hey, some of the new stuff sounds like Nonfiction, and I think a lot of that might have to do with the fact that I write a lot of the music and Alan writes the lyrics, and it's the same singer and guitar player for both bands.
I get more of a heavy emotional vibe from Dan's riffs when we're doing Nonfiction work, but the Hades stuff is always a lot more, I think, pounding and aggressive and just more metal, if you want to call it anything.
We originally had talked about let's never record a song that we know in our hearts sounds like Nonfiction for this Hades record, but there is one song called Responsible that Alan and I wrote that's obviously pretty much a Nonfiction song, but it's on the Hades record. But at the same time, we know what Hades fans want. We know that they want, crazy drums and maybe difficult songs to play, difficult arrangements.
There's definitely two separate bands, completely two separate vibes, but Dan and I are a big part of both bands, I think, and that certainly carries through in the sound, and there's definitely no problem with mixing them together, I think, the sounds, because Nonfiction sound was in a lot of ways like a mature Hades, and I think we kind of bring back a lot of the cool elements of metal with the current Hades, Nonfiction flavor to it.
And Hades is a little bit more anal retentive, very tight, intricate, where Nonfiction was more of a jamming thing where me and Mike Christie and we just would go off and improvise, and I would write a song in the dressing room of Lemoore at 9 o'clock at night, and we'd go on stage at midnight, and we'd open up with that riff I just wrote, where Hades would never do that. I mean, we used to over-rehearse. It was crazy.
On Hades breaking up, I pursued a few different things. First off, I had an audition with the Ramones, believe it or not, and was called back for a second audition. It was down to the current bass player, me, and somebody else. I don't know how that happened. Couldn't picture myself as a Ramone, but after that, I joined up with a band called Nevermore for a while. Did some shows around town with them, opening up for groups like Danzig and Junkyard, Cycle Sluts, White Zombie, and whatnot. And that didn't really work out. So I later went on to pursue some of my own groups. This was right after, I guess, leaving Nonfiction. I guess I was there in the beginning, made a demo, and due to musical differences, just moved on.
Right after Hades, I played bass with Mucky Pup, and then I didn't play anything for about 5 years after Mucky Pup found a bass player. And then I went back to guitar and played guitar and in a cover band called Angry Drunk Men that played the New Jersey club circuit. Did that for about 5 years. And then I moved to Texas, and I really haven't been playing much of anything except for doing 1 or 2 Hades shows a year.
I had gotten into martial arts pretty heavily, and I actually was hired as a head instructor for a school for about 2 years, and I did that, and I actually didn't even play guitar almost for those 2 years. I really got into martial arts. Now I do both. I teach guitar mostly. I got about 35 of those students, and I got about 5 or 6 martial arts people that I teach also. It's a combination of Taekwondo and Hwarangdo, which are 2 Korean-style martial arts. I'm certified black belt in Taekwondo. I'm trying to attain certification in Hwarangdo, but I got a couple more years on that one. So.
Yeah, 10 years later, and here we are doing another record, a second record for Metal Blade, and it's totally unbelievable. I mean, Dan and I started out doing this, it seems like yesterday, but it was a long time ago, and it's really cool that there's enough people out there that still like listening to this music and buy these CDs and stuff to keep us doing it, so we're pretty psyched about that.
I've always been interested in working with Dan because he's a good songwriter, and we get along really well, personality-wise, and that's really important when you're in a band. You can't just have just a musical connection. You have to have the personality connection also, and if that's not there, the band is doomed. And that's kind of was the problem with the original lineup, is that we weren't really getting along that well. But the lineup that we have together now, everybody gets along beautifully. We're more mature as people, and so we don't get upset over little things like we used to.
record, there is just no comparison. Heavier, faster. Ed Furman went from writing a couple good riffs a year to writing amazing songs.
New material, I think, is probably the strongest stuff that we have to date. The last record, Save Yourself, was excellent, and Dan wrote some great songs on there. And this one, I actually have some writing on this record. So, and the reason that happened is Dan actually had a little dry spell in his writing. It was about 4 months. He didn't come up with really material that was that strong. So I figured, well, Ed, you better get moving and write some songs. So I actually sat down and wrote some good songs.
Dave is playing so much better than he's ever played before.
I was probably about 15 or so when I got their first record, and I dug them a lot. I knew they were from Jersey. I bought the second record. I got into them. I got into nonfiction because of Hades. Actually, me and Alan had been friends for years, and I got to meet him through like the club scene, and we wound up hanging out a lot and becoming good friends. And what happened was, basically we tried to play in another band called All Time Low, which was a side band to Alan's, and that was nonfiction type style music. And it didn't work out for me because it wasn't really what I wanted to play, but we knew we wanted to play together at some point in time. And since we're roommates now, we've been living together for the last couple of years. When they decided to do the Hades thing, and Tommy didn't seem to be working out, he just came in the room one day. He's like, "No, listen, you want to play on the next Hades record?" And I was like, "Of course." So I went to the band room. They got a tape of riffs from Dan, and I put the ankle weights on, and I worked real hard and got my chops back up and my speed, and tried to put together some good stuff for the Save Yourself record. I worked real hard on it. And, I'm really psyched, to be in the band because. I knew everything was coming together. When we did the record, I was like, we're definitely going to get something out of this. It was a resurgence in metal. I said, somebody like Metal Blade or Nuclear Blast is going to sign us, and it worked out for us.
How is Metal Blade Records treating me? What do I think of Metal Blade Records? And it's a cool shirt, right? I'm not the kind of guy who is all my record labels, from Torrid Records to Grand Slam. I mean, these guys went out of their way for us. They took money literally and figuratively out of their pockets for us. And I think bands do too much complaining. The label didn't do this. The label didn't do that. If you're a band and you have the amazing opportunity to have somebody pay your studio time bill, because that stuff isn't cheap, you should shut your mouth, play as hard as you can, tour as much as you can, and don't blame the record label. Metal Blade's awesome. Even if we're not their #1 priority, they treat us phenomenal. They are organized, and you couldn't ask for more for a label, particularly at this point in our career. I mean, I really think back now, if we had Metal Blade since day one and Hades just stayed together, we might be at the level that an Overkill's at or whoever.
It's definitely cool to be able to play music and record music at this stage in our lives when we don't have to worry about if the record's going to necessarily become the biggest thing or if we're going to necessarily get on that tour that we're kissing everybody's ass to get on or whatever. There's just none of that anymore for us. It's playing music, recording and writing music that we really love and putting it out there. And if Metal Blade decides after this, we essentially have a 2-record deal with them, and this is the 2nd record we're doing for Metal Blade. So if they don't re-up and do anything with us again, that's fine. I would still like to record stuff and release it on our own, even on a very limited, small basis, because, like I said, it's about the music. It's about creating something cool and being able to do it.
Hades, the Lords of the Metal Underground, are back with their latest release on Metal Blade Records, The Downside, featuring the new single and video, Ground Zero NYC. Catch Hades live March 4th at the Rec Room in Wallington, New Jersey, and pick up their new CD, The Downside, available now at Tower Records. Check Hades out on the web at HadesUSA.com.
Timmy Gillis is the owner of Big Blue Meanie, and Big Blue Meanie used to be in Hackensack. Now we're here in Jersey City. And Timmy recorded his first thing he ever did was a non-fiction demo, which became the American version that Alan and I released of It's a Wonderful Lie. Then we did another recording of It's a Wonderful Lie, which came out in Europe on S2D, which we hate. We did Exist to Resist and Save Yourself with Timmy, which were awesome.
Hades is a band that I do a record with pretty much on a yearly basis, and almost every year, and or maybe every 18 months or something. And it's one of my favorite things to do. I look forward to it all year long because they're a good bunch of guys, they're a great band. It's the same bunch of criminals every year, so the ball breaking never sort of picks up where we left off, and there's a lot of ball busting. And this record will be the best record sonically that we've ever made, and I know this for a fact. We're working on equipment that is literally 10 times the order of the equipment that we've been able to use in the past.
Save Yourself was pretty much a concept record, and this is not really a concept record at all. But there's some cool things on there, I think. I think there's some interesting stuff worth looking into. Dan came up with the title, The Downside, after a lot of different ideas and stuff. We just couldn't seem to hammer anything out. We weren't happy with anything, and he just came up with this.
Usually I've thought of most of the Allen titles, I think, like whether it's nonfiction, It's a Wonderful Lie, or Preface, or Save Yourself, Exist to Resist, Resisting at the first. But Alan and I were throwing every day. We'd go into work, and I'd be like, give them 6 titles, and they were stupid, a lot of them, you know.
I got an idea in my head for something, and he suggested doing an image that had something to do with the circle and the arrow and whatever, so I put some art together on the computer and just went to town and made a cover that basically looks like this image that we've created with a circle and an arrow in it falling downward, and then if you look at the cover, it's actually different sized ones as they're coming off of a back surface. So it's hard to explain over the video like this, but when you see it, it basically gives you 2 impressions of downward movement. It's got pieces falling down on the front, and you're looking down in through them as you're looking at the cover. So I think that's kind of cool. And the whole record has those kind of images on there.
I'm writing a song that's based on May 5th, the year 2000, which is a time where all the planets in our solar system are going to be in line with the sun. It's the first time it's ever happened, and there's all these predictions that, you know, the world's going to end, the gravitational pull is going to be all messed up. And that's an interesting thing. Like, here, there you go. What if that happens and the whole planet just implodes upon itself? Well, problem solved, you know? We're not going to have to worry about too much anymore after that.
First track, Ground Zero NYC, is about New York City getting blown up by a nuke, and what would happen if that were to happen, because things like that nowadays, with the Soviet Union falling apart and black market nuclear warheads out there, there's definitely going to be some crazy person who's going to get a hold of one and do something drastic like that. It's just bound to happen. I think the cataclysmic things are going to be happening over the next 10 years, just in general in this planet. And there was just one crazy idea that we put together, and that actually became the topic for the first song.
regrets in our musical career, except I wish Hades maybe had a booking agent earlier on in our career, because our whole career with Hades or Nonfiction, we've had managers, we had booking agents, but very few people that really did anything to get us to the next level. A lot of the stuff we did was on our own. I mean, the band Overkill probably did more for Hades or Nonfiction than anybody else, manager, booking agent, or record label, just by letting us be on their 93 European American tour. That's my one regret, is that had Hades played more shows throughout America before we broke up, I think we would have even solidified a bigger following.
Chris Dudley can't do that. Shaquille O'Neal can't do that. You know what I'm saying, Jay?
I think it's a really cool thing that after all these years we're still able to create things and come up with interesting stuff, and I'm just having a blast with it. And I think that any band out there, whenever you're talking to people, they say, what advice for young bands do you have? It's believe in what you're doing musically and have a good time doing it, and don't stop or don't do it for any other reason. Just enjoy what you're doing and create.
Thank you all very, very, very much. See ya.